Hi, my name is Jiei Tomioka, and my presentation is Earthworms as Soil Quality Indicators. About me. I should join the science research program because I am passionate about science and I want to make a change in the world. I chose the article Earthworms as Soil Quality Indicators, a case study of Chrissy Field and Bayview Hunters Point Naval Shipyard by Carolyn Wu, Grace Nesmith, and Spencer Houston. I selected this article because using worms in order to find out environmental dangers that could affect other organisms, including humans, is something that can change the way of life. We should care about this topic because soil qualities can affect our own lives, and if we neglect it, certain hazardous chemicals might find a way into our bodies. Summary. Carolyn Wu, Grace Nesmith, and Spencer Houston from San Francisco performed research on soil quality from two different places. They use a method of testing worms from the soil in order to find out if the soil is healthy or not. Chrissy Field and Bayview Hunters Point Naval Shipyard were both military sites, and heavy metals that were used in making weapons were deposited in the soil. Heavy metals can affect the lives of surrounding residents, workers, and could cause diseases if humans are exposed to it. CF ended up having more worms than BVHP. CF was surrounded by a wealthier neighborhood compared to BVHP, and they already experienced remediation efforts in the past. We have to find a more accessible way to remediate soil, so poor neighborhoods such as BVHP wouldn't have to deal with such toxic chemicals. Why should we care? Heavy metals and toxic substances that are in the soil can end up affecting the lives of nearby residents and workers. Certain health risks from heavy metals can be cancer, chronic respiratory diseases, childhood asthma, and higher hospitalization rates for respiratory conditions. We are going to compare CF and BVHP. This slide is about CF. It is located in San Francisco. It was formerly a military site. It has high SES socioeconomic status and a much higher percentage of white people. CF was formerly remediated using excavation and channel digging back in 1994. This means that it's more likely to have healthy soil. Chemical remains are very low. In the pictures on the left, you can see that Chrissy Field in 1921 was used for military purposes, and Chrissy Field right now is just a field. BVHP is also located in San Francisco. Has a higher percentage of Black, Indigenous, and other people of color and lower overall SES. It was formerly a military site used for Navy shipbuilding and repair from 1941 to 1976. It has high amounts of radiation and other hazardous chemicals present due to sandblasting ships exposed to nuclear weapons. On the left, you can see that BVHP was used to build ships back in 1942. Question goal hypothesis. Question: which area would contain more toxic substances and what effects do toxic substances have on the ecosystem? Goal: to find out whether CF or BVHP has more toxic substances and why. We also want to find out how to remediate soil the most efficiently, and being accessible is a very important factor. Hypothesis: soil from CF would contain less toxic substances because it already experienced remediation efforts in the past. What is being done right now? Excavation and removal. This is where the contaminated soil is physically removed and replaced with non-contaminated soil. Bioremediation. The use of fungi and microorganisms to remove harmful substances from soils. Thermal treatment. The use of heat to get rid of heavy metals. Semi-permeable plastic sheets. These are temporary solutions that protect humans from immediate exposure to the toxic substances. The downsides are a short-term solution and vulnerable to ripping by wild animals. Methods and materials. Arsenic. They're naturally present in serpentine bedrock used as fill material, and they're involved using shells and fuses. Lead. Leaded gasoline, coal burning, and lead-based paints. Chromium. Sandblasting of chromium alloyed steel. Chromium coatings on military weapons. Mercury. Used in detonators for shells and bullets. This shows that these heavy metals were used in military activity at one point. Worms. What they do for the ecosystem. They improve soil structure, water movement, nutrient cycling, and plant growth. These toxic substances can affect their growth, structure, and metabolism. Small amounts of worms is a sign of unhealthy soil, and a large amount of worms is a sign of healthy soil. Techniques used. Mustard tests. They are used to determine their soil quality by counting the number of worms that move to the top of the soil profile in response to the mustard solution. They utilize everyday household items, although less precise. They're very cheap and they can be run by communities. Soil sampling. Tested for arsenic, lead, chromium, and mercury. This requires more time and a lot more expensive compared to mustard tests. However, they are a lot more precise. Results. Chrissy Field averaged 8 to 9 worms per test, and the worms were larger and healthier. BVHP remediated soil had an average around 1 worm per test, and BVHP non-remediated soil had 0 worms found in all tests. On the bottom left corner, on the table, you could see the results from the soil samples. Data analysis. CF worms were visibly larger, more abundant, and robust. The soil in CF was darker and richer in nutrients, whereas the BVHP soil contained more sandy loam. The CF soil was dark and rich in nutrients, which is a sign of healthy soil. The BVHP worms were smaller in circumference and they were shorter. Studies show that lead, chromium, and arsenic can lead to earthworm infertility and weight loss. This shows that there is correlation between the heavy metals and the worm's healthiness. On the bottom, you can see the table where BVHP non-remediated had the most amount of arsenic, lead, and mercury. BVHP remediated had the most amount of chromium, which was an unexpected outcome, and CF had the least amount of everything except for lead. Discussion. From mustard tests alone, we cannot conclude that BVHP is more contaminated than CF, since each location had varying soil types. BVHP sandy loam is less favorable for worms compared to the dark nutrient-rich CF soil. Application. To innovate military weapons that don't require harmful metals. It could prevent any future situations that put soil quality at risk. Next step. To find a way to remediate soil that is more accessible to everyone. Conclusion. Question. Which area would contain more toxic substances and what effects do toxic substances have on the ecosystem? Answer. CF contains less toxic substances. They can be harmful to surrounding residents or workers near the area. Chrissy Field demonstrates the benefits of thorough remediation efforts with healthier soil and ecosystems. Bayview Hunter's point highlights the consequences of incomplete remediation and systemic environmental justice. Acknowledgements. My mom gave me advices on how I can make my slideshow more appealing, since it was mostly full of words at the start. Here are my references, and thank you for listening to my presentation.